Okay, welcome to my final exam review. Sorry this took so long to get out. Dealt with a lot of issues, so I deeply apologize, but I was working as hard as I could to get this out. It was a lot longer than exam 2, so it took longer than expected, but let's get right into it. All right, first let's start with logistics for the exam. This is in class. Do not go to the testing center. If you go to the testing center, they will not have a test for you to take, and you will feel silly. Again, if you're like, let's say you're in section 1, and you're like, I got a flight on Tuesday, you can just go to section 4s. Just show up at the time and room, and then we will have group sheets to rate your group members. They'll be color coded. We'll make a big fuss about it, like, hey, pick up the right sheet, blah, 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 and tell you how to do it. And there's detailed instructions, and if you screw it up, should you be in college? Questionable at best. Anyway, I sent out a very detailed announcement about how the group rating sheet works. If you are confused about it, check your Canvas messages and look at the ones I've sent you. By the way, some people are still just now finding out that I've been putting you on game all semester, bro. I'm the GOAT. Anyway, okay. I digress. Check your freaking Canvas inbox, all right? Yeah, so this is when the sections will be in these rooms, on these dates, at these times. Show up on time. If, for whatever reason, like, we're nearing the end of time and you're, like, not even close, which just has never happened ever, but if that were to happen, just to ease your mind, we don't really stop you from taking the test and finishing it in, however much time you need. Obviously, don't abuse this, but we're not going to rush you because we're getting paid by the hour. All right, here's some advice for the exam. So this will be 150 multiple choice questions. 75 of those will be new material, and that is what these slides will be focusing on almost purely. I'm going to talk about how to study for old material in a second, but the 75 questions of new material is what you really need to focus on. The other 75 questions will be pulled from forms A and B of exams 1 and 2. So kind of free. Like 50% of this exam is free if you just put in a little bit of effort. And yes, the questions will be identical unless they deal with numbers. Then the values will be changed so that it's not like too easy, but the math questions are not that hard. Yes, use process of elimination on matching questions, please. Like, especially if it says use each choice once, you can do this. And please think about the words. So I remember on exam 2, there was a question about SCID, which is severe combined immunodeficiency. And the answer for that one was like, your body fails to develop both T and B cells. Well, that would make sense if it's combined, because there are other syndromes where you fail to develop only T cells or only B cells, but you still develop the other one normally. So combined might be that. And if you were to think about that, even if you were like, oh shoot, I don't know anything, you might get that question right. So it sounds really stupid and simple, but seriously, like, think about the question a little bit if you are super stuck, or just move on and come back. And yes, these will be posted under final exam review materials on Canvas. Okay. My number one study rule for knowledge maxing is no performative studying. What do I mean by that? I know at least one person in this class has probably done this. And if that's you watching this video, then you better listen up. Don't be going up to a whiteboard and just writing down all this information. Like, people like to just write out all their stuff, their whole study guide, they basically just print it onto the whiteboard. And what did we learn from this? That I like writing on whiteboards? Congratulations. That's not on the test. It's performative, inherently. Even if you're not doing it, like, that's what people, like, you're writing on a whiteboard and being like, ooh, look how much I know. But if you're not actually testing yourself, you're getting nothing. So that's why I say use active recall, okay? That pretty much just means instead of regurgitating the entire study guide on the board at once, be like, okay, I'm going to take this little section of bullet points I think I can get. I'm going to try and write it down from memory. And I'll write it down from memory on the board because the board is a good tool. Don't get me wrong, I love the board. The board is great. Okay, and then you turn around and you look at the study guide after you try and go, oh, I missed that thing. And then you mark it down basically and then move on and basically try again until, if you wanted to, you don't have to write it, but you could maybe verbally talk through the whole study guide, right? Those kinds of strategies are going to be a lot more effective for getting through this exam material than just being a performative studier. Please do not do that. If I catch you doing that, I will just be very disappointed. Moving on. Okay, so here's old material strategies. We're just going to blast through these real quick. So multiple choice and matching, use the old exams, rule out duplicates because there are a few duplicates between forms A and B, and then just use flashcards and active recall like I said. It's very, very simple, and I know it says do not distribute these or post them online. Luckily, Quizlet, if you use Quizlet, has a feature that you can just make your flashcard set private so no one else can see it. If you're using Quizlet, for example, if you're using another software, just use that. And of course, test yourself. So after you feel really confident with it, go through the forms and just take them. It should be pretty easy, especially because it's going to be those exact questions, except for the math. But again, if you know how to do the math problem, it shouldn't be too hard. And at most, you're going to miss a couple of points if you just really can't do it, which sucks. Okay, and then the math and numbers-based questions. These are the question types that you will still need to know how to do. So ATP equivalence, you should know this. Refer back to my exam review slides. Under exam 1, I have some pretty good in-depth slides for ATP equivalence. And in my exam 1 or 2 review slides, I also have practice stuff for D values, serial dilutions. I made this equation for beta oxidation questions. So if it says, oh, I have a fatty acid or a fat of blah, 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 chain of N carbons, plug that number into this formula, 17N over 2 minus 7, and you will get the correct answer. If you use that, you will get the correct answer every time, okay? And also generation time. Yes, use my old slides, and numbers will be changed. Please, 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 please do not memorize the values. You will cook yourself. And I really can't say I didn't warn you. Look how many exclamation points there are. Okay. Now here's new material strategies to go through. Being efficient with your time. Know enough to differentiate, but not so much that you'll be overwhelmed. So using previous quizzes is really good, but ultimately you just need to be able to know unique and distinct characteristics of these diseases. So for example, strep mutans, all you really would need to know to be able to differentiate it from among a large pool of matching is that it causes dental caries and the majority of dental plaque. Don't focus on general and unhelpful things. Oh, it's gram-positive. Congratulations. There's about a gazillion different kinds of gram-positive bacteria. So this narrowed down almost nothing. This was completely unhelpful. So focus on these sorts of unique characteristics, and this is what's going to help you be super efficient. And I've pretty much included that throughout this slideshow. Just the most unique things that if you just know only what's on my slides, you should be able to tell apart basically everything that from the new material portion on this exam. And God forbid you read the textbook actually, if there happen to be any gaps in my slides, which there might be, you'll be fine. Again, use your brain, all right? Process of elimination, matching, fill in the gaps. These slides probably aren't perfect, but I've spent a lot of time on them, so I hope they should be good enough. All right, now let's move on to the first section. Excuse me, I had to take a drink. Facts. There's just a few facts for the new material that you kind of just have to know, know it or you don't, okay? So Lancefield typing, you should just know what this is. It's used for Streptococcus species, and it is a serological test to differentiate species of Streptococci based on their C antigens. Groups A and B are the significant pathogens of humans, which this is probably already too much information, but there you go. There's also more on the other TA slides. If this feels incomplete, simply look at theirs. Theirs are very in-depth on certain things that I personally didn't feel like going in-depth on because it's not really necessary to do well on the test. Antigens for serotyping enteric bacteria, HO and K. If you know that it's HO and K, may or may not be total free point right there. Maybe, perhaps, wink, wink. General characteristics of a coliform. Boom. Again, kind of like, maybe not necessary. But just go over that, and you'll be fine. As long as you know what a coliform is and isn't, like, that's all it is. Does it ferment lactose? It's a yes. Yes, it's coliform. If it does not, it's not. Hooray. What is an arbovirus? This is important. It's spread through arthropod vectors, so bugs. And, of course, mosquitoes are the goat of this because they bite you and, they are transferring blood and those sorts of things. But also ticks are arbovirus carriers, and it's mostly just those biting insects. It's possible other various kinds of bugs. So, like, occasionally there's lice that can transmit certain diseases. We'll talk about that, but almost always it's going to be mosquitoes, maybe ticks, right? They're just the goat. Okay, now let's start with all the bacteria, which is my favorite. Clostridium botulinum produces botulism toxin, causes flaccid paralysis via blocking acetylcholine release. And of course, it's associated with improperly canned food because that's an anaerobic environment that they can grow in, or raw honey. Again, anaerobic environment, their spores are in there. It only really affects infants, though, because their stomach acid is not acidic enough to stop those spores from proliferating. Notice, by the way, I bolded some words. Could this hold significance? I guess we'll never know. But maybe, just maybe pay attention to that. And if you really need me to spell it out for you, well, I wouldn't be surprised. I received numerous emails of pleas for hand-holding. Look at the frickin' bolded words, basically. Okay, Bacillus anthracis. You'll see black SR legions. They're a BSL-3 pathogen, and it has a protein capsule. That's a very unique thing about it. It has a protein capsule. B. cereus, Bacillus cereus. Common cause of food poisoning. Like, it's in dirt, and if you leave your rice in the fridge for a long time, or if you leave it out, like, maybe don't eat that. Clostridium perfringens causes gas gangrene. Oh, there's a surprising lack of information on this slide. Yeah, you're welcome. Clostridioides difficile, main cause of antibiotic-associated pseudomembranous colitis, aka super mega diarrhea. C. diff, super mega diarrhea, like terrible diarrhea. And the bolded word. Clostridium tetani, whatever. Toxin causing spastic paralysis, so that's rigid. So all your muscles are like flexed, like the back is arched, the fists are clenched, the face is making a face, versus botulism, flaccid paralysis, so like loose. Like that's what we use Botox for. It relaxes your muscles, and then no more wrinkles. I'm so beautiful. Enterococcus species, they can grow in very rough conditions. They cause nosocomial UTIs, which are that's just a fancy word for hospital-acquired infection, and endocarditis. They are commonly resistant to vancomycin. So, vancomycin-resistant Enterococcus. Oh my gosh. Streptococcus pyogenes, cause of scarlet rheumatic fever, and it's group A in Lancefield. Strep pneumoniae, sensitive to optochin, and its polysaccharide capsule is essential for virulence. Pay attention to that. Lancet-shaped diplococci basically just means they're two like spherical shapes, but they're kind of pointed at one end. Serratia marcescens, it is a major cause of hospital-acquired UTIs and other infections, and it produces this chemical called prodigiocin, which is, I believe, a helpful antibiotic or antifungal. Kind of interesting. Viridin streptococci, aka strep mutans, causes dental cavities, and that's all you would really need to know. Strep agalactae, positive for the CAMP test, Lancefield group B, and it causes neonatal meningitis and sepsis. Staphylococcus aureus contains protein A, which is a heat-stable enterotoxin. It can cause abscesses, food poisoning, toxic shock, like classic toxic shock, by the way. Staphylococcus epidermidis, it is the most common bacteria on human skin, and you could totally, even if you forgot this, you could guess it because it says epidermidis, like epidermis, like skin. Generally non-pathogenic to humans, but in certain cases it can make you sick or give you an infection, but generally no, because it's all over your skin. Listeria monocytogenes. It is more dangerous for pregnant women because it can infect their baby, typically resulting from contaminated meat or milk products. Pretty bad. Mycoplasma pneumoniae, no cell wall. Like, boom, that's a gimme right there. No cell wall. And they need cholesterol to survive, and they will cause atypical pneumonia in young adults. Corynebacterium diphtheriae shockingly causes diphtheria. Whoa, who would have guessed? And the diphtheria toxin creates a gray pseudomembrane in the throat. I forgot to bold this, but that is like the big thing. Like that gray patch at the back of the throat is the big hallmark of diphtheria. Mycobacterium tuberculosis currently infects, estimated to be at least 1/3 of the Earth's population, which is insane. But most of them probably don't know it. It grows very slowly, usually doubles around every 24 hours. And you'll see on like a chest x-ray these granulomas, so these large masses of macrophages surrounding the TB cells. Basically, it can lay dormant for decades, and you may never get sick. You may get sick after having it for like 40 years in your body, and then you might die. Mycobacterium leprae shockingly causes leprosy, which is also known as Hansen's disease, and it is main reservoir is armadillos. Also, fun fact, cannot be cultured on lab media. You have to use cool tissues. Mycobacterium ulcerans causes Burulli's ulcers. Okay? And it is the slowest growing mycobacterium species. It can take months. Like, tuberculosis takes like a month at most to get colonies in ideal conditions. This could take like half a year under ideal conditions. Hurry up. Cutibacterium acnes or Propionibacterium. It causes most cases of acne. Who would have thunk? Nocardia. Mostly affects immunocompromised individuals found mainly in soil. Helpful, friendly word of advice, don't worry about this one. Just don't. Actinomyces species. They're anaerobic. And they can cause infections after dental procedures, including a painless, lumpy jaw. Lumpy jaw. Brucella melitensis, typically spread via unpasteurized dairy products. It also causes undulating fever, can damage organs, holy typo, like the liver, kidneys, heart, and lungs. Bordetella pertussis, I'm sure you've heard of pertussis, and if you haven't heard of pertussis, I'm sure you've heard pertussis. See what I did there? Whooping cough. Really loud. And it will kill you through a lack of oxygen to your tissues. It's actually very scary. People who have had whooping cough say, like, you feel, you're gonna die. Like, if you don't get treated, you cough so hard you just can't breathe. You just keep coughing. It's really bad. Bacteroides fragilis. It's an anaerobe. It's part of your gut microflora. It can cause intra-abdominal infections. Don't worry about that one, maybe. Borrelia recurrentis. Transmitted via lice on your body, and it causes relapsing fever. Burkholderia mallei. Did I skip one? No, okay. Primarily infects equines, so horses, donkeys. Human infection is pretty rare, but if you do get sick, it's pretty rough. Pneumonia and sepsis. Burkholderia pseudomallei. It's endemic in Southeast Asia and Northern Australia. Causes melioidosis. And this is what we talked about in class. It can remain dormant for years. So Vietnam vets, right, Southeast Asia, they would get this, and then they'd come home and live a life for like 20 years, and then they get sick. And so they call it like the Vietnam time bomb or something like that. So watch out for Vietnam. Obviously, melioidosis is a dead giveaway as well. Bartonella quintana, trench fever. Again, maybe don't worry about it if it's not bolded. Bartonella henselae causes lymphadenitis. So, like, if you have gotten scratched by a cat and it got, like, infected, that's kind of what it is. Bartonella bacilliformis, carrion disease, spread by sandflies. Pseudomonas aeruginosa produces a blue-green pigment called pyocyanin. Remember that. And it typically causes opportunistic infections in burn victims and those with cystic fibrosis. It can be kind of dangerous, especially with cystic fibrosis. If anyone's seen 5 Feet Apart, I'm pretty sure I watched that years ago. And that's what they had in that. So that's kind of cool, I guess. Salmonella typhi causes typhoid fever with rose spots, and it can cause chronic infections of the gallbladder. That's what to watch out for. Gallbladder, which leads to a carrier state. Also another thing to watch out for, but mostly gallbladder. It's like the only thing, gallbladder, on this test. Salmonella enterica, so inflammatory diarrhea. It's zoonotic, so reptiles have it on their skin. If you are handling like a lizard or something and you don't wash your hands, you might get it. Also poultry, so like eggs, chicken. E. coli, again, part of your normal gut microflora. It can ferment lactose and causes many diseases. Wow, another typo. Just rough. Which are toxin mediated, basically like, we'll talk about Shigella in a minute, but Shigella is basically just E. coli with a gene for the Shiga toxin. And so these genes can just be passed on via plasmids, and these toxins cause a lot of problems because most strains of E. coli don't make you sick. Neisseria gonorrhea. Well, what would you guess that causes? Maybe gonorrhea. Just a hunch. And that is an STI, so watch out for that because they probably won't say gonorrhea on the test because Robinson usually won't give that much of a freebie. Fun fact, it can cause infant blindness in like 1 to 2% of cases, so they would put silver nitrate drops in their eyes at birth back in the day, or even now, I think still, if your mom has gonorrhea and she gives birth to you, so you don't go blind. Shigella, hey, there we go. Causes shigellosis, which is also called bacillary dysentery via the Shiga toxin. And it has a very low infectious dose. It's really interesting, but you only need anywhere from 10 to 100 organisms. Really, really low. It's kind of crazy. Proteus mirabilis. It's a common cause of UTIs and kidney stones from bacterial infection, which is nasty, producing lots of urease. And cells often move in swarms, which is kind of cool. Vibrio cholerae causes cholera. Rice water diarrhea, so like fire hose, just really watery. And it uses a CAMP activating toxin to kind of pull that water into the digestive tract. Vibrio parahemolyticus comes from contaminated raw seafood, and it's a halophile, which would make sense because the ocean is salty. Oh, whoops. Vibrio vulnificus, open wounds contaminated with seawater. You can get necrotizing wound infections, which is nasty. Leptospira interrogans. If you swim in water contaminated with animal urine, you could get sick with this, and it is a spirochete. Borrelia burgdorferi, that is Lyme disease, spread by ticks, so shout out to them for getting one up on the mosquitoes. I guess, I don't know, Lyme disease sucks. And bullseye rash is huge giveaway. It looks like a bullseye. Campylobacter jejuni, infections often result from poultry, and it is the most common cause of bacterial gastroenteritis in the United States. So, diarrhea. Helicobacter pylori causes peptic ulcers, also called duodenal ulcers, basically the stomach, irritating the stomach lining, inflaming it, and it's a modal curved rod. Treponema species, the only one really that stood out to me from the readings, and also like I looked back at the quizzes. This is the only one I saw on there. If there was another one, maybe it was from one of the classes, because the other classes' quizzes are all different. I only looked at one sections, but this is the only one I saw on the quiz, so this is the only one I put. But double check the textbook. I could be missing something here. It causes the STI syphilis, and it can be passed from mother to child at birth, resulting in congenital syphilis, which is seen via Hutchinson's triad. So it's like a trio of really bad symptoms. I think like your teeth are kind of eroding away. It's really bad. So Hutchinson's triad, it's an STI, and it causes syphilis. Yersinia pestis, the plague, from ye olden days, like 14th century Europe, can be bubonic. Again, bubonic is a freaking dead giveaway. Nothing else on the test or in the scope of this class is bubonic in nature. It's a CDC level 3 agent. We actually have some here. It's pretty cool. Very, very deadly, of course. Killed a lot of people, like 1/3 of Europe. Pasteurella multocida. Animal bite infections in humans, but like has a lot of hosts. So, for example, it can infect birds, and mammals as well. But fowl cholera is what it's called in bird species. Francisella tularensis. This is tularemia. Very low infectious dose. It needs cysteine, and it may also be known, because he probably won't put tularemia on the test, just like he won't put gonorrhea on. So you should probably know it's called rabbit fever or tick fever or deer fly fever, because handling any of those when they're infected, or if like these ones bite you, if you handle an infected rabbit, you'll probably get tularemia. Legionella pneumophila causes Legionnaire's disease. Again, kind of obvious, may or may not be written that way on the test, but it is spread via contaminated water droplets and aerosols. Where might those be circulated? A shower, like a hot tub, or any sort of like water feature, but really those kind of places like a hot tub or shower, or like a humidifier even could spread that, because those all create droplets and aerosols of water from which these can spread. Haemophilus influenzae causes meningitis, ear infections, so otitis media, and swollen epiglottis, which is epiglottitis. So otitis media, epiglottitis, if you see those two together, it's Haemophilus influenzae. Good Lord, how do I say this? Aggregatibacter actinomycetum comitans. Wow. Associated with aggressive periodontitis, so gum disease. Aggressive periodontitis. Aggregatibacter afrophilus is also associated with periodontitis, but less so than this one that I don't want to say again. Don't worry about this one. Worry about this one, not this one. Porphyromonas gingivalis, strongly linked to chronic periodontitis. Again, perhaps don't worry about this one. Prevotella intermedia is associated with acute necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis, ANUG. So if you know ANUG and perhaps acute necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis, you're good. Now for viruses. Wow, that was a lot of bacteria. Again, if you have questions or not sure, consult other resources, textbook, slides, other TA slides. If you're really, really not sure, send me an email. Happy to answer it when I see it. Okay, pox viruses. Shockingly, smallpox and molluscum contagiosum. Those are both what you should know are pox viruses. By the way, the difference, there's a lot more bacteria than viruses for this class to know. More so in the fact that viruses are split up into categories like, pox viruses or human herpes viruses or papillomaviruses. They kind of split them up by genus, versus the bacteria. They kind of go species by species through that section. So that's why I have them listed by genus, and then I talk about species under, because like herpes, you need to know all these, but most of these, if you just know like general stuff about the genus, you're gonna be good. Again, if it's on my slides, you should know it, and you probably don't need to know anything else. So anyway, smallpox, fun fact, had a lot of interesting vaccination methods. So variolation, which is when they would take the scab of someone who had smallpox and it would grind it up into a powder and basically consume that. It was pretty effective. And then like the smallpox vaccine that they would give, decades ago, they would basically like scar up your skin with a needle. I think it's a bifurcated needle. It contains the small amounts of the vaccine, which allowed them to not have to use as much vaccine, so they could actually like get everybody cheaply and readily. So scarring the skin with a needle is a big thing. Also variolation, which would make sense because it's the variola virus. Again, molluscum contagiosum is a pox virus. Human herpes viruses, there's a lot of these, but they're pretty simple to remember. So number one is herpes simplex, it's cold sores, so don't smooch anybody with these. Number two is genital herpes. It's basically just one, but on your genitals. Shocker. HHV3 is varicella zoster virus, so it could be abbreviated as VZV. Varicella is chickenpox, and zoster is shingles. So chickenpox and shingles is, and if we know how it works, you get chickenpox and it lays dormant in a nerve, and then maybe later in your life it just erupts, and that's what we call shingles. So that's number 3. Number 4 is Epstein-Barr virus, EBV, infectious mononucleosis. Guess who got that freshman year? Me. It was not fun. Also, Burkitt's lymphoma. HHV5 is cytomegalovirus, so the big thing with those is the owl's eye inclusions. You can look up what those look like. HHV, I swear I didn't do this on purpose, 6 and 7. Hey, 6, 7. They're kind of like the same, so they both do roseola. And I promise you, you will not have to worry about being like, oh no, I have to match which one is number 6 and which one is number 7. I mean, which one is number 6 plus 1. Am I right? No, you're not going to have to worry about that. He's just going to pick one or the other. And it's going to be roseola. And number 8 is Kaposi's sarcoma. So know all these bolded terms. Papillomaviruses, hey, they cause warts, so like HPV. And certain strains cause most cases of cervical cancer. Because what is a wart? It's just the virus causing your cells to multiply uncontrollably. And what is cancer? Oh, cells multiplying uncontrollably. Oh my gosh. So, hey, get vaccinated for HPV so you don't get cervical cancer, because that would suck. Polyomaviruses, don't worry about this one. Adenoviruses, they cause flu-like symptoms, and they commonly spread in pools or military barracks. Moving on, hepatinoviruses, partial double-stranded, DS, so double-stranded DNA genome. It uses reverse transcriptase, and it causes hepatitis B. That's pretty much it. Parvoviruses, single-stranded DNA virus. It's the only one. It's the only single-stranded DNA virus, so that's how you know it's a parvovirus. Super easy. Picornaviruses, they're naked single-stranded RNA viruses, so polio, also poliomyelitis, but it's polio. It's the same thing. Hepatitis A, rhinoviruses, which are the common cold a lot of the time, and Coxsackie viruses, hand, foot, and mouth. So hand, foot, and mouth is Coxsackie viruses, which are picornaviruses. So therefore, hand, foot, and mouth disease is a picornavirus. You're welcome. Caliciviruses, aka norovirus. And whenever I put stuff in parentheses like this, it's probably going to be written like this on the test. So it's not going to be one or the other. He'll have both. But I just have it because, like, this is the proper name, I guess, and this is the other one. I don't know. Explosive diarrhea. Shocker. Cruise ships, schools, any crowded space, really. Like, it could be like a dorm or a military barracks or a prison. Cruise ships is kind of a dead giveaway, though. Hepavirus, hepatitis E. Wow. Toga viruses. Eastern equine encephalitis, Western equine encephalitis, Venezuelan equine encephalitis, and also rubella. So, E, V, and V. If you see equine encephalitis, it's a toga virus or rubella. Flaviviruses, all of them except Hep C are arboviruses, and we already talked about what this is. So, like West Nile, dengue, yellow fever, chikungunya, Zika. Again, if you know that like one of these or two of these is a flavivirus, you're probably good. Coronaviruses. If you missed this question, bro, like, drop out of college. I'm sorry. No, don't drop out of college. But, like, if you miss this question, bro, what are we doing? All right, COVID-19, coronaviruses. Easiest softball of your life. I promise you, it will be this easy. Retroviruses, they use reverse transcriptase to integrate into host genome. They include HDLV1, 2, and, of course, HIV is, like, dead giveaway. This stands for human T lymphotrophic virus 1 and 2. But HIV is like dead giveaway for a retrovirus. Paramyxoviruses, measles, mumps, respiratory syncytial virus. So it'll be abbreviated as RSV most likely because that's kind of long. And then parainfluenza, which is also called croup. It's characterized by a seal bark cough, really loud. Look up sounds of it. It's kind of whack, but it's a pretty accurate description. Croup. Paramyxoviruses. Okay. Orthomyxoviruses is the flu. Pay close attention to this. I know I didn't bold this, but pay close attention. Can experience antigenic shift or drift when the H and or N spikes in the envelope mutate. What does this mean? Antigenic shift is when there are sudden, rapid changes. These typically cause like pandemics, so worldwide problems. Think of like the Spanish flu of like 1914 or whatever, or 1908, I can't remember. Antigenic drift, gradual changes, mutations accumulating over time. These are, seasonal flu epidemics. That's why you need to get a flu shot every year, because of antigenic drift. Shift is very drastic and much, much scarier than drift. And those are orthomyxoviruses. Fun fact, myxo is the Greek root for mucus. I wonder if this will be useful on the test. Who knows? Rhabdoviruses, rabies. Negri bodies in the brain, they are bullet-shaped. They can infect all mammals, so wide host range. Fun fact, the reason rabies is very associated with bats is because bats can live with rabies for a really long time. Low keys, rabies might not even kill it sometimes, but it will eventually, usually. It's just because the bats have a slow metabolism or whatever. It's very interesting stuff. But that's kind of why rabies is associated with bats, because they can live with it for a long time. Filoviruses, Ebola and Marburg. So, fatal hemorrhagic fevers. Ebola and Marburg. Filoviruses. Simple enough. Bunya viruses, transmitted by inhaling air contaminated by dried mouse urine or feces. Remember that from the quiz. And it is the cause of hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. So, boom, right there. Focus on that. Arenaviruses, they contain ribosomes, so when they're on an electron micrograph, they give a sandy appearance. And they cause zoonotic hemorrhagic fevers, which are aptly named for wherever they're from. So there's a lot, and I didn't put them on here because you don't really need to know them. If you know this, you're probably good. By probably, I mean absolutely. Reoviruses. So there's two here. Be careful. Rotavirus. This one is when kids get the, mega dookies. 100 trillion virions in just 1 gram of stool. Some of these, 50%, require hospitalization. It's kind of dangerous. And that's a reovirus. And also cultiviruses, a.k.a. Colorado tick fever. That is also a reovirus. So watch out for that. Okay, that's everything. Best of luck to you on this exam. I wish you well. You can do this. Study hard. Take my advice. If you need help, don't hesitate to reach out. I hope this review was helpful. Smash like, subscribe. Let me, plug the channel real quick. Good luck. Godspeed. May the force be with you. And have a good one.